if there is something that you need to do, or there's something that you want to do, and your brain's telling you to pull out, or maybe you're putting it off, you're procrastinating, leaving it for later because you're a bit scared and you're a bit anxious about it. You know you need to do it and you want to do it, but your anxiety is getting the better of you a little bit. I need you to watch this video because I'm about to share with something absolutely profound, in my opinion, that's going to help you tremendously if you applied properly and consistently. So let's take, for example, what's a good example? You have a job interview. You have a job interview coming up in a week. Now, you applied for the job, you've secured the job interview, all right? You're excited, but you're nervous. Obviously, you're nervous. You're thinking, oh God, what am I going to say? Especially if you have no experience in job interviews, this applies even more to you because you have no experience. You're nervous. You don't know what you're going to say. You go online, you look up how to properly conduct myself in a job interview, all those sorts of things, so you can prepare yourself better. And then, the closer it comes, your anxiety is getting worse because it's an unknown situation. So you have a perceived threat. You have a perceived threat, and your fight or flight response is triggered. And you're thinking, should I commit to this? Should I run away? Should I just ignore it completely? Or should I just go gung-ho and get into it? In the back of your mind, you know you need to do it. In the back of your mind, you know you need this to progress forward. But it's simply just the enemy in your head, the anxiety, that's preventing you from doing that, or preventing you from kind of making that switch in your brain. So this is what I want you to do. Well, this is what most people do. If they ask, like, oh, I'm anxious, what am I? Someone will say to you, weigh up the pros and cons of doing this. So that's a good idea. The pros are, you get a job, you have a secure income, you're going to be able to afford things you want. You're going to be more confident in your next job interview, if there is one. Like a bunch of things, so many good things can come out of doing this job interview. The cons of doing this job interview are, potentially, you don't get the job, you conduct yourself not very appropriately, you're nervous, you're anxious. That's not necessarily a con just because you're anxious, but you don't get the job, you feel a bit discouraged, and all of those things. So there obviously are some cons. Now, that is where most people will stop. Most people will stop at the pros and cons of making the decision. What I want you to do now, and this is the fundamental, this is the really important thing, I want you to not only weigh up the pros and cons of making the decision, I want you to weigh up the pros and cons of also not making the decision. That is a comprehensive risk analysis. That is assessment of risk in a comprehensive form, the way that it should be. You don't stop at the pros and cons of making a decision, because there are also consequences for not making the decision. Now, what are the pros of not going to the job interview and just ignoring it? They call you on the day, you ignore it. This is what's going to happen. You're violating your conscience. So you're going to feel guilty as hell. You're going to feel absolutely guilty. You're going to feel like shit. You're going to feel like you're not confident. You're letting the anxiety win. Okay? So if you don't go to that job interview, you're going to be beating yourself up about it for weeks, because you're thinking, oh, I'm so weak, I'm useless, I can't even go to a job interview, my anxiety's too this, that. And remember, whenever you let your anxiety win, anxiety 1, you 0. Anxiety 1, you 0. And if that keeps happening, you're going to have, anxiety's going to have 30, 40 points, and you're going to have 0 points, and it's getting stronger. You're feeding the anxiety that way. Now, those are the potential cons of not making the decision. What are the pros of not making the decision? Short-term relief from anxiety? I can't really think of anything else. I cannot really think of anything else than a bit of short-term relief of anxiety for not committing to an action that you know you need to take, that's going to be good for you regardless, for your personal growth. So the idea that I'm trying to get across here, and I hope I'm communicating it well because it's the first time I'm kind of verbalizing it, is you want to put your anxiety, you want to be more scared, this is what you want. You want to be more anxious about not making the decision than you are about making the decision. That is the fundamental thing I'm trying to get across here. Because the moment, if you convince yourself that you are more afraid of the consequences of not making the decision making the decision about the action that is making you anxious, you have now flipped your anxiety. That now it is no longer in front of you. It is no longer, this big scary monster. It is now behind you, chasing you down the path where you need to go. because if you're in a position where you're convinced that, and you believe that the consequences are worse, and you are more afraid of not committing to this action, your conscience is going to force you into making it. It's as simple as that. The same reason if you're more scared of taking the action than you are about not taking it, then chances are you're probably not going to do it, or you might. But this is just such a, I think, the utility of this is so profound, and so, I don't know how far this can go, because, and this isn't like my making entirely. Dr. Jordan Peterson has a really good take on this, but I'm just trying to communicate it in my own way so that maybe more people can understand and I can help some more people, because I've used this not only in situational anxiety, but existential anxiety. When it comes to, it's like my fight with addiction and things like that. I've weighed it up the exact same way, the same formula. I've weighed up the pros and cons of beating my addiction and fighting it, and I've weighed up the pros and cons of not doing it whatsoever. And the pros are, honestly, I can't think of any actual real, pros that actually have any real utility whatsoever. But the cons of not doing that is you become a sad, lonely, disconnected drug addict with no hope, because you've given up. And then the pros and cons of obviously doing it, it's hard and all this stuff, but you're going to be better for it in the end, and you will get there. But without those extreme examples, that's just from my personal life, this can be applied to most decision-making anxieties, because there's some anxieties that this doesn't necessarily apply to. But I hope I've communicated that in a way that's going to be useful, and it might give you some more clarity, or it might help you realize something that you already knew. But again, I'll just repeat it quickly. Instead of simply weighing up the pros and cons of making an action, or taking an action, I should say, of taking an action, you need to weigh up the pros and cons of taking the action, and also the pros and cons of not taking the action. That is comprehensive risk analysis. I want you to remember that, comprehensive risk analysis. That is what needs to be taken every single time you have a decision that you're anxious about, any decision actually, within reason. So yeah, I hope that you find some utility in that, and you can apply that in your life somehow. And I hope I've verbalized it and kind of got that across, in a way that's understandable. Because in my head, I wasn't sure how this was going to go, but I really hope someone can use that. And if it does help you in any way, or you think, oh wow, that, that might be something I could look into, or, try practicing. And if it works, please let me know in the comments. Please let me know how it works for you, because I think it's, as someone who suffers from anxiety, social anxiety specifically, I found it tremendously useful. I found it more useful than any other tool that I've found, like, thinking about, within like CBT and things like that, which kind of dips into that a little bit, I think. But just this specific kind of technique or formula, whatever you want to call it, I think will be very useful for a lot of people if applied properly and thought about properly. But I guess I'll wrap it up there. Go out there and kill it. Beat your anxiety. I know you can do it. And thanks for watching. Cheers.